I want to say, yo, I have a message to all Black people. That's it. I'll just post something in my story and I have a message for Black people to uplift them. I mean, I do believe in keeping, business and your private life separate. But as an artist, as a poet, that's something I don't know how to do. Because when I'm on stage, I am me. When I'm off stage, I am me. So when people talk about keeping, work and pleasure separate or whatever, that's both for me. And even being an artist is not actual work for me.
What are you doing it for, and for whom? And have they asked you? And have you talked to these people that you want to make diverse? So, have you seen any initiatives actually happen that make sense for you? And have you made strides to access this so-called support?
Yeah. There's a few spots, a few people that I think are really pushing it in a really positive way. One of them being the Black Archives. They have this spot in Amsterdam East, and they have literally like their own Black archives with stuff filled from the Caribbean, places like Suriname, also here, the Netherlands. You can find books, you can find letters, you can find I think even DVDs and other artifacts. So for me, the Black Archives is basically a way for a whole bunch of people to do more research about who they are and who came before them. And I think that is a major key in discovering your own cultural or a racial identity, but also in like knowing where you want to go. Being able to just research stories, people that you might even know, family members, that's a really powerful thing. And for them to offer that space to people, I think is a really powerful tool, where everything is combined. Everything on the internet is so dispersed, and you'll really have to know what you're looking for. But being in the Black Archives, you can just, be a hermit and see what you want. And for me, that's powerful.
So the Black Archives works for you. Which initiative, so-called under diversity here, hasn't worked for you?
I don't think like specific initiatives really come to mind. I think it's been individual organizations or things like magazines, commercials, and even small campaigns you'd see brands do, right? For example, every time it's Pride, you'll see a bunch of stores redecorating their spaces, and all of a sudden you have a whole section with rainbow-colored stuff. And then next month is all back to normal, and we see the same mannequins all over again. So for me, it's a bunch of places. I think for me the most clear example is just walking through the city, like I said, when it's Pride Month, and knowing that right when the month is over, you'll see, they're normal models, no sort of inclusion whatsoever. And same goes for Black people. It's terrible. You have a few events in Black Achievement Month, for example, Black Achievement Month in October. And because it's, this specific month, you'll see a lot of initiatives popping up. So that I'm really happy about. But then when the month is over, you kind of sometimes, it bursts your bubble. Oh, right, this is actually how it is. And then going to other events, you see the lack of representation, and diversity is really low. And for them, that's normal. Having one Black person or one Asian person on the lineup is normal. That's diversity for them. So, yeah.
I wanted to ask about, obviously we have 30 years between us, separating us. Archive and the archive. But social media seems to be something that's a game changer when it comes to representation. You can literally curate all your Instagram feeds to have only Black content.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of starts to happen with AI. So how do you think that's changing how you share your content, your audience, and how you view yourself globally?
Powerful. I think that's a point that people don't usually make, but it's become so normal, but definitely something I'm really grateful for. It's a tool that I try to use, not obsessively. I'm not going to, be on social media all the time and take it too serious, because for me it's yes, it's internet and it's powerful, but it's also just the internet. But I think that for tools like this, when it comes to creating your own representation and curating your own messages and making sure that, well, the messages are as undiluted as possible, I do like to use that. Even if it's like small videos where I'm just talking about things that bother me, or even, you know, snaps of things that I try to tell people to uplift them. It's all really direct. So if I want to say, yo, I have a message to all Black people, that's it. I'll just post something in my story and I have a message for Black people to uplift them. And what I also love is that I can share stuff. So, for example, if the Black Archives has a new project, or if I see something by Daily Paper, or even someone, you know, a few blocks away, it's really easy for me to boost people in my own community through the platform of social media. Yeah.
And I'm interested to know how you divide the space on social media for your work, for your personal life, and how you balance that.
I don't.
Exactly what I thought.
I don't. I don't. I mean, technically, I do have an artist page on Facebook next to my own page, but that was more because of the format. You know, like format-wise with Facebook, it worked better. But I don't. And that's not even because, I mean, I do believe in keeping, you know, business and your private life separate. But as an artist, as a poet, that's something I don't know how to do. Because when I'm on stage, I am me. When I'm off stage, I am me. So when people talk about keeping, you know, work and pleasure separate or whatever, that's both for me. And even being an artist is not actual work for me. So the content that I would put up as, like, you know, just Sydney is the same content I would put up as Sydney Lowell, spoken word artist or actress or poet, whatever, you know, it would be. So I actually don't, like, purposely I don't do it because I want to be relatable.
But I have a question for you. Do you think that is Sydney, or that is Sydney because of the world she's like socialized in?
Yeah. To be honest, I'd almost immediately go for the first. But I think that to a certain extent, everyone will be conditioned by the second, in a way. Because you cannot help but be, or like adapt, or be just slightly influenced by the space that you're in. So I definitely feel like, you know, I also maneuver socially. You know, if social media wasn't there, I might not even have any sort of urge to be sharing a whole lot. But why I still would go for the first is because I've always been a very expressive person. So for me, social media is a tool to express that. At the same time, I don't try to stress it too much, but it does help me with it, like in order to reach people.
And how do you think that changes your audience or your reach?
It makes it bigger, inevitably. And especially for a person like me, you know, the most part of my content comes from words, speech. A lot of what I do is speech. I try to, you know, have action and whatever, but as a poet, you depend on words and you depend on people hearing them or seeing them. So social media plays a huge part in that, to be seen, but also to make sure that you can get dialogue started.
I wanted to ask about, like, for example, Leslie, there's American diaspora, UK diaspora, Dutch diaspora. What do you think are the common threads that we have, and what do you think are completely different? Just briefly.
Okay. Common, I'd say culture. Even though you might be from different countries, born there or, you know, growing up there, there's usually a few things that we have in common. That can be certain things that we like. That can be traditions. That could be music that we relate to. Even the small ways, manners and for me, most like obvious thing is the nod amongst Black men. I just spoke about it recently. It wouldn't even matter if I went to a small village somewhere across the earth. If I was with a Black man and he saw another Black man, they would acknowledge each other. And I'm gonna research this. I will do something. I will put it in a poem. I'm highly convinced that this is something that black men have been doing from the start of time, and they remember. So those are also cultural in a way. And those things I think we have in common. Things we don't necessarily remember actively, but we know it. And things I think, yeah, we don't have in common. I think the way society normalizes you. So, for example, mentality will be different in the UK. You know, things that are going on right now, for example, with Brexit or even socioeconomics, you know, are so different from here. And so that also influences how you maneuver as a black person, you know. So I think that the more environmental, you know, like the way you grow up, those are the biggest differences to me.
Your accent.
What do you want to know?
Because all my Dutch friends all have different accents. Like it's a little bit American, a little bit British, and I'm sure you've had that question before. I would never ask you. It's just because I got the camera rolling, and I'm sure I'm sure people will be like, "She's Dutch." So like, what's up with the accents in the Netherlands? Just like. Is that really a hardcore connection with the African American diaspora in a sense, or?
You mean amongst black people or just generally?
Let's talk about black people in general.
Depends who you ask the question to, because there's a huge community of, for example, Nigerian and Ghanaian people here. They grow up with English too, so that's where you get one group of accents already. Then there is social media and other types of media like films and documentaries that usually come from the States. You know, yes, we have influences from the UK, for example, but most of our media content comes from the States, and so does the culture that we associate with that content. So, like you just said, you talked about vocabulary and how we lack it in a lot of aspects of cultural issues or other societal issues. When it comes to gender, when it comes to race, you don't have the proper vocabulary. So what do? You take words from English. Now, they also exist, of course, in British context, but the way we see them portrayed from the media that we take in is from American society, American culture. Yeah. So I think that's different. That's the difference I feel in learning English as opposed to maybe 20 years ago when my parents spoke English, it was British. Because the textbooks still teach you British English when it comes to the spelling, when it comes to the stories that you get, and now that's changing. In school, you still have British English. It's always British. But when you go online, you watch movies, the kids, they're faced with American English. And I think for me as well, it's also being able to identify. So I'm very adaptive. I'm not like weak or, but I'm very adaptive. So usually I adapt to things that I identify with. And that to me is American English, and also the cultures that I associate with it when it comes to Caribbean people or black people. That's how it kind of happened for me, But I definitely think that it happened for a lot of people that way too.
Yeah, I would be curious to know about your role models as a teenager. Like, who were you a fan of, or whose poster did you have on your wall?
Well, depends on the phase,
Okay.
So if you were to come visit my home when I was 11, Twilight. Vampires and wolves, the type of stuff. Twilight, all day. I had, Edward Cullen, he was the vampire. I was Team Edward, right? So my whole my whole wall and my door were plastered with, these small posters, like portraits of the Cullen family and whatever. But a little before that, I had posters on my wall from Tokyo Hotel and whatever. I had this rock face too. I still like rock, but visually, that's what happened in my room. I never really had role models. People tell you like, I have an idol. I never had those inspirations, yes, but I never had role models like that I picked.
Right.
But role models have always been in my family. That is very much true. Like in my family is my role model. That's how I measure how to love. That's where I get my politeness from. That's my family taught me how to not how to think, but gave me tools. So a lot of what I do, I get from them, and so I think they're my role model. Yeah.
Okay. One of the questions I ask people is how their culture influences their work, but it seems like it's all one pot of goodies. Yeah. So it's just you just live your life, and your culture permeates all corners. But was it always been like that? Was there any job you did where you were like, wow, this doesn't make sense for me, I'm totally isolated here in this space?
Well, to be real, I think I have been privileged enough to not be exposed to those type of situations long term. So, like really, just being really honest, my first job I had when I was 18 or 19. A lot of kids start way earlier, with like small jobs. Luckily, I didn't have to do that. When I did, I was already in an environment with other people of color, so that was, not a thing. But there have been a few small jobs where I just felt a little bit out of place. That wasn't so much because of culture or ethnicity, but more about drive and what my passions were. So that, I was at work and I'm a really passionate person. So even if I feel like the job doesn't challenge me, I will find ways to challenge myself, which will make me even more tired seeing that none of the other coworkers are doing the same, but you still have to be there. There's no other way. So that, but I've never really been in situations like that.
Please like and subscribe. Shout at Hues Films.